You're on camera all the time. We play-by-play people aren't on that much, which I've always thought, to waste the movie star good looks for 2 or 3 minutes over a 3-hour game doesn't seem right, but that's what's happened in my career.
That was Sean McDonough, and this is On the Bench with Mike Hall. That's me. There are very few people in the history of sports broadcasting who have the talent and the resume that Sean McDonough has. He has called enormous events over the years in so many sports, it's hard to encapsulate them all. But in his time at CBS, ABC, and ESPN, here are just a few. The Olympics, the NCAA tournament, Monday Night Football, the US Open in tennis, all the golf majors, the World Series, and most recently, the college football playoff. On air, his voice is unique and powerful, helping to make big moments feel even bigger and more memorable. Off air, he's not only as funny a guy as you'll find in the biz, but he's known to fellow sportscasters as one of the truly kind and generous people around. About 15 years ago, I did the studio hosting for the Frozen Four, and I worked with a guy named Bob Norton. Bob worked with Sean back in the 80s. He told me once, Sean's the type of guy, if you called him at midnight and said you were in trouble and needed 10 grand right away, you'd have it before the sun rose, no questions asked. And Mike, if you told him a good story, he'd make it 20. In my experience with Sean, that's exactly the guy I know. While I'm still working on wringing out some cash from him, I did get him to do this podcast. He's had so many great Big Ten calls. One being the famous 2015 Michigan State football game where the Spartans won on a fumbled snap to the punter as time expired and little seen special teams player Jalen Jackson scored the winning TD.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. It's picked up by Michigan State's Jalen Jackson, and he scores on the last play of the game. Unbelievable.
I mean, that call is perfect, and it became an instantly legendary big play call. So when I met up with Sean, I started by asking him, before the game, how much prep went into the specifics of the rarely used Spartan, Jalen Jackson?
Not much. He was on our spotting board, and obviously he was on the flip card that the schools give you, that have the entire roster. But I didn't know much about him other than I think he was like a third team safety and a special teams player. But that's why you should prepare something for everyone, right? Or at least be familiar with everybody who has a chance to be in the game. And it's one of the things that I always ask the coordinators in our meeting during the week leading up to the game is, is there anybody else who even has a chance of getting in who maybe is not on this flip card or we haven't talked about already?
Like that moment, I remember it was there's a lot of things in your career where I remember where I was when it happened. And when did it hit you that, whoa, he has trouble with the snap is like a thing and there are t-shirts with it and it's going to live in East Lansing for decades? When did that fully register for you?
Not long after the game. There was a lot of immediate response to it. And I've had people send me pictures of folks wearing the t-shirt that has the entire call of it, transcribed on the t-shirt. Matter of fact, Bo Garrett, who is a producer at Fox, I used to work with at ESPN, was in East Lansing. It was in a restroom where the thing was written. There was some picture, something, which is probably where most of my calls belong, in the bathroom anyway. But with the whole thing transcribed, it was on a poster or something. So, and I have Michigan State people walk up to me in airports and say, that they have one guy played his voicemail for me, and that was when you called him, you got my call, which I think there's got to be some copyright for that, right? Could I probably sue the guy for
there's money for you.
Unlicensed usage of that call? So, and obviously it's to the opposite extreme for the Michigan people who kind of associate me with something that wasn't all that pleasant. And as I always say in those situations, don't blame the messenger. When you just described it, I would have been equally excited if it had happened in the other direction because it was one of the most unbelievable endings of any game that I've ever seen in any sport.
Yeah. That's the thing. As a play-by-play man, you just want it to come down to the end. You want it to be dramatic. You want it to be cool. But I think the way that you hit the perfect note and you had his name right away, and you've been very gracious every time you've interviewed this. You're like, my spotter had it. You know, he was right there. He had it right away. But still, everything worked. Have you ever screwed up a big call? Like, have you ever had a moment and you're like, Badgers win, and it was Buckeyes?
Yeah, I have. To the first point, I give Zach Rapatrizone, the spotter, the credit all the time because he deserves it. And that was one of the things in that moment, Mike, is, you know, when you have a moment like that, especially in football, where there's a quick change of possession, you know, a lot of times there's a block punt. You're way up there. You're not really sure who blocked it. But then someone picks it up and he's running for a touchdown, and you want to make sure you have the right guy. I mean, the worst thing ever in a big moment is, you know, and there goes Jalen Watts-Jackson running for the touchdown. No, it's Bob Smith. And you're like, oh, you just, you know, it's the worst, right? Because it's one of the fun things about what we do, especially in a moment like that, is you don't get a chance to do it over again. So it's just like being a player or a coach or an official. You know, it's spontaneous and you have to get it right in that moment. You don't get to erase it and do it over again. So, and the other thing that was great about that call, not the call, but what went into it, is Zach was so emphatic pointing at Jalen Watts-Jackson on the chart. Like, you want to know. I always say to Zach, don't tell me if you don't know, right? Because I'd rather fill time. You can always say it's picked up by Michigan State and he's at the 20, and meanwhile you're searching your chart for who is that. We caught a real break in that we were on that side of the stadium. You know, his number 20 was almost pointing directly at our booth there in Ann Arbor. So, you know, if it was on the other sideline and maybe he was facing us, so you couldn't see a number, it's completely different. So we were fortunate in that regard too. Have I screwed up? Yeah, I've screwed up. You know, the one that comes to mind, it wasn't a big play necessarily, but 2003, Syracuse won the national championship. As you know, I'm a proud Syracuse alum, and won the national championship in basketball. And that was on a Monday night, obviously, the national championship game in New Orleans. And we stayed out long enough that we had to go directly to our flight the next morning. And I was going to Buffalo to do the Frozen Four college hockey championship for ESPN. And the New Hampshire Wildcats were in the national semifinal, and I was still perhaps not fully at my best a few days later. And I screamed, the first goal of the game, I screamed, "It's a goal for Connecticut." Connecticut was not in the game. They were blue and white, and they're the, you know, but it was, it was not for Connecticut. So, you know, and those are the embarrassing things that, you know, and I screwed up many more calls than that, but that's just one that comes quickly to mind in response to your question.
Well, you've had this career where you've called so many big games, but even in America, there's only a small handful of Yankees, Red Sox, Duke, Carolina, Michigan, Ohio State. And you've called a Michigan, Ohio State football game, right?
I think I've called, I know I've called at least two.
What are those like? Everything that goes in and around it to be calling a game that
it's special every time. I mean, I've done, I don't know, hundreds of Red Sox Yankee games, over 100 easily, and it's special every time. Even, you know, it's particularly special when both teams are good. I mean, that's a huge part of any rivalry. Is it's a lot better when Ohio State and Michigan are really great. You know, that's I don't. It's still great, but you know, I think it would be greater if Michigan would come back and win one or two of these.
Agree.
You know, to make it feel more even. And we went through that with the Red Sox Yankees. There were periods where the Yankees were really good, the Red Sox weren't, and then, you know, that kind of flipped for a while too. And now it's back to, at least last year, the Yankees were pretty good and the Red Sox weren't. But yeah, those things feel special every time you have the opportunity and the honor to do it.
Yeah. This one's a little off the charts because Nebraska wasn't in the Big Ten yet, but the 98 Orange Bowl was Nebraska, Tennessee. It was Tom Osborne's finale. The two quarterbacks were a guy named Peyton Manning and Scott Frost. And it was basically, this was pre-BCS, it was basically half of a national, like it was a national championship game. And
Ish.
Yeah,
and again,
right?
the Michigan people aren't going to like this because Michigan had already, if I remember the chronology right, and this is what, 23 years ago now, I guess. First of all, to the beginning part of it, I knew who Peyton Manning was. Everybody did. And at the time when I was at CBS, we had the SEC, as they still do at CBS. So we had done a bunch of Tennessee games, and I had talked to Peyton Manning several times. I remember thinking, not only is this guy going to be a tremendous quarterback in the NFL, but I remember saying to him when he was a college kid, someday you're going to be president of the United States. He was
Really?
just that impressive in the room, in the meetings. He's way mature beyond his years, and everything that we've come to know of him since 1998 that the rest of the world has seen. Yeah. But I remember, I really didn't know Scott Frost. We weren't doing Nebraska games, at CBS. We were in the SEC every week. So we're in Miami, and he comes into the meeting room. And first of all, I remember thinking in like shorts and a t-shirt. And I remember thinking, this guy's the quarterback. He looked like a linebacker, and he was just, but then when he started talking, you could see he was a great team leader. And Michigan beats Washington State, I believe, in the Rose Bowl. And I think it was the late, great John Saunders who signed off saying, and Michigan's the national champion. And we haven't done this game yet. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. I love John Saunders, but is he the one who crowns the national champion? I mean, there's still this game to play. So Nebraska beat them. Very impressive performance. And I really felt like, at the very least, they have a compelling case here too, So I remember Scott grabbed the mic after the game on the field and basically said, like, hey, wait a minute, we should be the national champs. And so there was a lot that went into it, and they wound up being split national champs, which is, I think, kind of what might have sped up the process of the BCS. Because I don't remember which one it was. The coaches, I think, picked Nebraska, and the writers picked Michigan, or the other way around. But yeah, but I'm not surprised that Scott Frost became a coach and a successful one, because you could see all the leadership qualities in him back then.
Well, there was a point in the game where you said, mark my words, Scott Frost will be the head coach at UCF and go undefeated and then become the head coach in Nebraska. And I remember looking back at it and being like, how did he know that?
My modesty precludes me, but since you brought it up, I'm known to be clairvoyant.
Yeah, that's true.
Matter of fact, I won many state lotteries and Powerball just with my ability. I saw a comedian one time who said, if these people are psychics, how come they have to ask you your name when you go in? Right? Shouldn't they already know that? So, no, I couldn't tell you that Scott would be the coach at Nebraska someday. And, I hope for his sake they get it going, because, as we both know, he was the right man at the right time. I still think he is. I just think this is indicative of, it's a harder job than it was in the days of Bob Devaney and Tom Osborne. They're not the only ones who are playing on TV every Saturday now.
Right. It's literally
a lot of other people who are too.
Right. Some idiots have created networks just for certain conferences. So every game.
It'll never work. These single conference network things, bad idea. Never going to happen.
Well, you won't get good talent is the problem.
Well, now we're on to something. I think Dave Repson is excellent.
All right.
Jerry DiNardo is one of my favorites.
All right.
And you're not bad either, Mikey.
You don't mean that. Let me turn to hoops. You called, it wasn't a great game, but I think it was a great moment. In 2004, Illinois had this magical team. They started the
Can I stop you for 1 minute?
You may.
When did you start preparing? Like back when you were at ESPN, I don't recall any of this kind of homework and research. And I watch you on the Big Ten Network. Is it Big Ten Network or the Big Ten? Like Golf Channel's very specific about its Golf Channel, not the Golf Channel.
Right.
So is it Big Ten Network?
Can I get back to you on that?
Okay. Yeah, you can. And you probably want to get back to your question. Illinois. Yes, I remember it well.
All I know is we're not
the loudest crowds I've ever been in. And that's back when they still had the chief who came out and ran around. I think it's the only basketball game I ever did at Illinois. It was Tim Duncan. Was it Tim Duncan?
That was Chris Paul.
Chris Paul. That's right. It was not Tim Duncan. But
Yeah.
they were really good. Wake Forest.
That was so Wake was number 1. Illinois was number 3. It was the Big Ten ACC Challenge. And again, they were number 1. They had Chris Paul. They were really good, but it was an 18-point blowout. Illinois crushed them. But I actually went back and, again, to your point, did some research and was re-listening to it. And there was a bunch of times that you and the guys on the broadcast would bring up, this place is really loud. This place is really humming.
And we were in a lot of loud places, but that's when you mentioned it, the first thing I thought of. I remember being there because I just remember the atmosphere was crazy. It was loud and electric, and it wasn't just, when they scored a big basket or went on, you could feel the buzz before the game even started. Yeah.
That team was, remember that was they went 29-0 and they lost in the title game to UNC, I think. But if you're making a list of the 10 best teams to never win the tournament, they're on there. I think them, or maybe the Flying Illini from 89, I'm sure they're non-Big Ten teams, but the Frank Kaminsky Wisconsin team from 2015 has got to be up there. There's a lot of close misses from Big Ten teams in terms of national titles over the years.
Well, I'm glad you kept it within the Big Ten. I mean, there have been other teams from other conferences too.
Nope.
I mean, I do an ACC game every week. Am I allowed to mention that?
You can mention it. I mean, we'll bleep it out.
They've had a lot of same thing in the ACC. It's not just. I mean, I know you have this very myopic view because you're employed by either the Big Ten Network or Big Ten Network, depending on who you are, I guess.
We're going to do research to figure out what it is by the end of this podcast.
See, I've already proven you're really good because you looked it up, but you're really good at names and dates and teams and when the game was and who was in the game and what happened. I just said Tim Duncan was in the game and he wasn't even in the game. So Bob Costas, every time I talk to him, that might be a name drop. Does that sound like a name drop?
Pick it up.
Yeah. By the way, if my Whisper Rock Golf Club shirt, do you think this will get me anything free? Do you think I'll get some socks in the pro shop or anything or a head cover?
Oh, trust me, Whisper Rock Golf Course watches. They listen to this.
Here in Arizona, Big Ten Network's big.
Yeah.
It's probably bigger than the Pac-12 network because I don't know if we can even get the Pac-12 network here. And Arizona State, I could throw a rock on. I'm just kidding. I think we get it.
Hey, speaking of,
I think they're Pac-12 networks, even though I think there's only one. Which again, not the Big Ten network,
right?
Pac-12 networks.
I've sent an intern to go look to figure out the answer.
Ross, who obviously did all this research.
Yes,
but I started to say Bob Costas, and Mike Tirico and guys like that, people like you who are smart. They can remember every detail of every game and what the date was and who was in it. And I remember some of that stuff, but my recall is not as good. But I do remember that crowd was exceptionally loud.
Well, let me test your recall on this. Do you remember at the end of the famous 6 overtime game how fast you ran to the bathroom?
Yes, I do. That's one of the things that people ask me about it. We have Matt Austin, who is. Are you drinking on the job again?
It's just water. It's just water.
All right, you say so. Matt Austin was the referee. He's now one of our referee in the booth. Matt Austin was the referee in the LSU Texas A&M game. I think it went 7 overtimes. And that's what he has said. He almost wanted to invent some problem so that he could run off the field and use the bathroom. Officials are out there the whole time. The players and coaches, one of the coaches, you could run to the locker room, I guess, if they needed to. But I do remember that we needed to use the restroom. And I was particularly worried about Bill Raftery in that regard because, at his age, you're pretty much a Flomax commercial in real life. So,
you bringing them up. So pardon the flattery here, but you, Bilas, and Raf as a threesome, I'm serious. That was my Cosell Gifford Meredith. It is hard to do a 3-man booth. And like you pointed out,
and we proved that.
I might not have cared about a Seton Hall, UConn game, but if you guys were calling it, it was entertainment, I wouldn't turn it off. What was it like carrying them?
Well, thank you for hitting on really the hardest part of the whole thing. No, it was so much fun, you know, and really nobody carried it, which is, I think, the key to your point, Mike, about a 3-man booth. If it's going to work, everybody has to sacrifice a little bit. You know, you can't, if you want to dominate the thing, then it's not going to work. And particularly those two, because, you know, they both perform the same job. They're both analysts. So they had to sacrifice more of their time. But they were so respectful of each other. You know, they love each other. One of the great things about that is those two are two of my closest friends. I don't think I have a closer friend than Bill Raftery or Jay Bilas. So you know, that was part of what made it fun too. You kind of look forward to getting there on Sunday and doing the game on Monday, just because you're going to hang around with your buddies. Hey, if it turned out to be a great game, then that was great. But we still knew we were going to have a good time on and off the air. So yeah, I really miss it. You know, I still work with Jay, and that's awesome. But as you know, knowing Raph as you do, he brings something that very few people have brought. Unfortunately, he never brought a wallet or a credit card. But Bilas was and still is remarkably generous in that way. So neither one of us had to go too deep most of the time. But Raph, you know, the old what do they call it? Alligator arms and Grand Canyon pockets. And plus, you know, as you know, he plays quite a role in driving up the tab, particularly in the evenings. So yeah, might be nice if he. And now he works for 12 different networks. He probably works for Big Ten Network or the Big Ten Network. So
there was one time.
But it was so fun. It was the most fun. And our goal was like to be the first who could really bust on the other two, you know, or make the other two laugh with something that was meant to be a little bit of a jab. But it worked because it was always playful. There was never any, you know, meanness beneath the surface. You know, we all truly like and love each other, and it was blast.
It was all love the way you guys ripped on each other. Like Raph once.
You can't do that. Like, I'm sure you have buddies. We have a golf trip out here in Arizona every May with 16 guys, and matter of fact, Scott Frost has played in it over the years. Matt Davison, who's contributed to this network and made the famous catch, he plays in it just about every year. But I'm responsible for the roster, and every year there's 2 or 3 guys who can't make it. Something comes up. You know, your daughter is graduating from high school, although why you would go to that instead of a guy golf trip is beyond me. But, you know, people make decisions. So we have to rotate some new people in. And I always tell some of the new guys who don't necessarily know any or most of the other guys, if they're making fun of you, they like you. It's when they're not making fun of you that you have the problem. So, and that was the same way with the 3 of us.
There was a night that the 3 of you, this would have been like 05 or 06 when I was at ESPNU in Charlotte. And I think you like called a Winthrop game or something. You were very close to Charlotte, and I had a late shift in the studio. So it was like midnight, and you said, come meet us out at XX restaurant or whatever. And the 3 of you had some beverages. And Bilas was kind of like, I think you two like went to your hotel, but then Bilas was like, I got to go home. And I was like, I haven't had a drink. I'm happy to drive you home. And like the razzing was so great. When I get back, I drive it to his house, which, you know, was a mansion in Charlotte. He gets out of the car and it's like 1 a.m. and he screams, honey, a celebrity drove me home. A celebrity.
He's a funny guy. He really is. And Raph is too. And, you know, we really miss Raph, but we keep in touch. Raph is great at calling you at, you know, 11 o'clock at night from some or later. Matter of fact, one time it was very late at night and I got a call from a college basketball coach. And I think I was asleep. And I said, hey, at this hour of the night, I thought it was going to be Raftery. And he said, who do you think I'm with? You know, so you kind of, you know, most people stop dialing people late at night when they get out of college, I guess, you know, or maybe they're mid-20s, but Bill's still going strong with the late night phone calls. But I love it because, you know, it's an indication that he's thinking about you and wants to talk to you. And, you know, he's I've said many times whenever people talk about Bill Raftery, and I got interviewed several years ago for an article that this gentleman, Jim O'Connell, this legendary basketball writer, was writing about Raph. And I said, if you don't like Bill Raftery, there's something wrong with you.
Right.
I mean, he's just the best.
I remember in like 2010, this guy from Siena got hired to be the Iowa head coach named Fran McCaffery.
Yes.
And you and I talked for whatever reason, like a week afterwards, and you were like, oh yeah, I know Fran well. You're going to really like him. And I was like, really? And I didn't know that I would or wouldn't, but you were like, oh, we got along great because I called his NCAA tournament games. And I don't remember if it was at Siena or UNC Greensboro, but
well, actually it was when he was at Siena, they were in the MAC, the MAAC, the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference, I think it is. And they were kind of the power in that league. And the championship game most years was in Albany, which is where Siena is in Loudonville, New York, just outside Albany. So they were almost always in the championship game. And it would be, their championship game usually was on the Monday night of the start of championship week, right, which we have at ESPN. I don't know, am I allowed to say ESPN? On
yes.
Big Ten Network, the Big Ten Network.
Uh-huh.
So we, Raftery and Bilas and I would do the Big East, which started a day or two later. And, you know, the proximity, Albany to New York, made it easy. So ESPN would assign us to the MAC game, and then we go to New York and do the Big East tournament. So we got to know Fran quite well and Margaret from those years when we would go to Albany, and always thought he was a terrific guy and a terrific coach, and still do. And we're still friends and stay in touch. Remember, I did an Iowa football game a few years ago, and he and Margaret came by the booth, and they said, "What are you doing, tonight?" And I said, "Nothing. Probably just going to go back to the hotel, find something to eat." The baseball playoffs were on. He said, "Well, we have some friends in from Albany. We have some other friends who are coming over. Why don't you come over? We'll watch the baseball, have some food." It's great. So he said, "I'll pick you up at the hotel at whatever time." So he picks me up, and it is pouring like thunderstorm, torrential rain. I mean, it's raining sideways. So it's not a long drive to his house. We get to his house, and there are a lot of cars in the driveway. It's because they're having some people over. So I said, "I'm sorry, this is as close as I can get." And so he hit the button for the garage door. He said, "Let's make a mad dash to the garage door." I don't know, it's 50, 60 yards maybe. So we're sprinting through this driving rain. We get in the house, we're pretty wet. And anyway, we're there for a few hours. So it's time to go. He said, "Okay, I'll drive you back now." And we walk outside the house, and his car was still running. In his haste to run through the rain to the garage, which ordinarily he would pull right in if the cars were blocked, he had left the car on. So, I said to him two things. Number one, thank goodness he had a lot of gas, apparently. And number two, I think you being like the green coach of the year with an eye toward the ecology of our planet is probably not in the cards this year.
You're going to lose the award this year.
Really like Fran and his family. He, as you know, his son had cancer, his battled cancer, and we have a coaches versus cancer golf tournament every year. The coaches all do their own thing in their area, and then there's one big one every year. And a couple of years ago was in Atlanta. They always honor a coach who's in that area. It was Bobby Crimmins, for what he had done at Georgia Tech. But Fran had just started into this battle for his family. And he gave one of the greatest speeches. We've all been to a lot of charity banquets and dinners, and it was heartfelt and sincere and eloquent. And I thought there, I said, I've always liked this guy, but I think I'm seeing another example why I do.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. You said the baseball playoffs, which reminded me of something that in our years as a friendship, I've never brought up. So you set the record for being the youngest person to call a World Series when you're only 30 years old at CBS. And that was my heyday, early 90s. I was a 10-year-old kid.
I was going to say, I don't even know if you were alive then.
Oh,
you had your heyday if you're not alive.
But that's when I fell in love with baseball, and the CBS theme, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da, boom, boom, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da. That is
great. CBS has great theme music. I mean, I think the NCAA tournament, that college basketball theme music is great too. Although when I was there, and you do the 4 games in one day, the first day of the NCAA tournament, you do noon, 2, 7, and 10 or something.
Yeah.
By the 4th game of the day, when you're welcoming people to whatever arena in Washington D.C., that you're kind of I've had enough of this song for today. I think it's a great song, but like any song, you hear it too much, you're kind of tired of it. But the road to the Final Four continues. So does this song. But they have great theme music. But anyway, I interrupted you for the umpteenth time.
No, I was saying.
I like podcasts, right? Because you can talk.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But
yes.
Was that if you're putting like the most nervous moments, was the first World Series game of your career the most nervous you ever were?
Probably, but I think it was more the National League Championship Series that preceded. I did the baseball in '92 and '93.
Yep.
So before I left, I have a friend who is an actor who's well known. Who asked me if I was I going to be nervous? And he said, you've done like the Olympics and the basketball tournament, but you're one of several announcers when you do that. You're the main guy, you're gonna be on the National League playoffs and the World Series. And he said, how many people watch that? I said, well, wait a minute. Are you nervous when you make a movie? He said, no, because I know if I screw up, we can do it 100 times. So there's stop, do it over again. But when you're there, you're gonna be looking at the camera. Like, how many people watch? I said, I don't know, 100 million. I know it's on in like 150 countries around the world. He said, let's say it's only 1 million people in each country, and there'll be way more than that. I mean, that's 150 million people. He said, that's everybody in the city of Boston times whatever. You had all these mathematical formulas. So sure enough, game one, 92 National League playoffs. Pat O'Brien is wrapping up the pregame show, and they're counting in my ear, 10, 9, 8. And I just remember looking at the camera thinking, 150 million people. That's, that's the entire country of whatever. That's the, So, no, I do remember being, most of the time you just, doing this, like I'm sure every time you go on the air still, as much as you've done, you have the excitement. I don't know if it's anxiety, but the anticipation and the adrenaline flow. And I think when we lose that, we should just stop doing it. But that goes away. But that, I was openly conscious of, I hope I'm not shaking while I'm doing this. But it goes away fast. You start getting into the game. Part of it is just like you're on camera all the time. We play-by-play people aren't on that much, which I've always thought, to waste the movie star good looks for 2 or 3 minutes over a 3-hour game doesn't seem right, but that's what's happened in my career.
Right.
But but I think most people are. I've worked with a lot of analysts who are new to TV, and they're so stressed out about the on-camera part. And once you get them off the camera, they're just sitting and talking about the game, they're fine. Right. And I think the problem is because if like I'm sitting here looking in the camera and all of a sudden I lose my train of thought, start stuttering or stammering or whatever, the whole world can see it. Where, when you're doing that and it's just the voice over the game, people don't really notice, wow, he really mangled that sentence. Where you're on camera struggling to find the right words, it's a bit more stress inducing.
Let me ask a selfish one. You and I have talked, and I've started to do more play-by-play in the last couple of years than I had in the previous, like 12 or 14. Without like seeing a tape, like what's the play-by-play advice that you would give me? If someone comes up to you and they're like, I've been doing this, what is the thing that you say, well, remember to do this, or try to avoid that, or what's the thing you feel?
Well, there's a lot, I think the most important thing is be as well prepared as you can. That's really the most important thing. I know. Today, obviously, Ross did a nice job doing all this research and writing it out on index cards for you. But that's the most important thing. Because we talked about at the beginning, you never know which guy. Is it Jalen watched Jackson? Boy, it would be helpful if you knew something about him, but if he emerged from nowhere. Even simple little things like what's the longest field goal that this guy's ever made or even tried? Because you never know when the game's going to come down to a field goal. It happens frequently. So, ask the coach, what's the longest field goal you think he can make? So that if that situation arises, the coach said, well, he made one from 55 in practice the other day, whatever it is. So, and then if the game goes south in terms of its competitiveness, you delve more into the storytelling and the human interest stuff. So you need to know that stuff if you're going to be able to tell it. And I think we should try to humanize the people who the viewers are watching, make them take an interest in them. So I think that's the most important thing. And then, I think the mechanics of play-by-play are really important, how you interact with the analyst, how you tell a story, when you tell it. At the beginning, it used to be the time and score and all that. But now I think with the bugs all over the screen, you don't really need to do that as dedicatedly as we once did when I was starting out. So
right.
There's an awful lot that goes into it, but I think the preparation is the most important part.
Well, I know your time is precious, so I'm going to get to our final segment. Before you go,
I have time. I'm supposed to be on another Zoom later, but I was late for you, so I'm just going to be late for everybody.
So our last segment is called Before You Go.
Not by my fault. For those people who are watching, like, well, I wonder, McDonough was an hour late. I was just a couple minutes late, and we had a little work going on here in the house that required my attention.
Right. Just to be clear, none of them would have known that if you didn't say it, but because
I know, and Ross can edit that out.
All right, before we go,
probably I'm sure he'd like to edit out most of the rest of this too, but
it's going to be a 6-minute podcast by the time
it will be. Poor Ross, he's going to have the editing project of his life.
All right, let me try to get you out of here. The final segment is called Before You Go. It is 4 questions that
Ross says he's keeping it all, by the way. On our Zoom screen, I didn't know if the people who are going to watch this are going to just see Ross Patton and wonder what that is. Or you and I are the only two seeing that.
They will not see our Zoom chats, nor did they know that Ross is our producer, but now they do.
Okay, well, see, this is great inside baseball. I like to let people in behind the curtain.
I'm going to try for the 9th time to get this final segment.
And you will not get there, but I'll do my best. I'm going to put my hand over my mouth.
The segment is called Before You Go. It is 4 questions unrelated to anything whatsoever. Number 1.
And then are there lovely parting gifts?
Yes, you get to hang up.
I've read articles. This is a very profitable network. Like that Big Ten network pillow behind you would look good here in my sparse office.
It's yours. It's yours for a price. Okay, number 1. Behind me, I have a Pete Rose autograph ball and a Mark Burley ball. Give me the autograph you have at home.
Oh boy, I've never been a big autograph collector.
Me either, but those were like, they just fell in my
I don't know. There's a bottle of something. Oh, I don't know if you can see it. This Syracuse helmet autographed by Dino Babers.
Well, there you go.
This bottle over here, when I got the Monday Night Football job, those 16 guys on the golf trip got some big bottle of champagne, and they all signed it and wrote really disparaging things, which is what you would expect of your friends. The one autograph thing that I remember as a kid, I loved Johnny Bench. And I wrote a letter to the Cincinnati Reds, I think the general manager or the owner or somebody, and they sent me a ball. And I was thrilled. Johnny Bench autograph ball. And I don't know how long I had it, but one day I came home and my brother Terry had used it for fungal practice in the backyard, and Johnny Bench's signature was covered in grass stains. So.
Classic. By the way, that is...
I haven't gotten over it yet either. I don't know if you can tell. It was probably 50 years ago. But
my grandfather just wrote a letter to Babe Ruth. Can I get an autograph? And he wrote him back in like the 1930s.
Really?
Yeah, my dad still has it framed. He literally did just like, hey, can I get your autograph? You bet, kid. Babe Ruth.
I'm not buying that. This is you. You probably have it now as it's been handed down, and you're going to try to sell it for a lot of money. And there's no certificate of authenticity, so I don't like your chances.
Fair enough. Question number 2.
Already.
Best concert you've ever been to?
Billy Joel and Elton John.
Me too. I went to see them at Wrigley.
At Wrigley, yeah. I saw them at the old Boston Garden. But surprisingly great concert from much more recent, because I think I was in high school when that happened.
Yeah.
I have a friend of mine who was on the board of this. It used to be called the Wang Center in Boston. I think it's a city center. It doesn't matter. But anyway, so he called me like, tomorrow night I've got 8 tickets, 6 rows center for Crosby, Stills, Nash. And I'm thinking, and I like their music, and I remember thinking, they're still alive? So sure, I'll go. I have nothing better to do as usual. So unbelievable. They were all in their early 70s. I think Stephen Stills was 70. And Crosby and Nash, I think, were 73. Because, it's great. You're sitting in the crowd. You want to know, like, how old are these guys, right? But they still had the voices. That harmony thing, you lose the range in your voice as you get older. That's why a lot of great singers have trouble singing later in their life, or don't quite hit the high notes like they used to. But it was fantastic, and the crowd was really into it, and I thought it was awesome.
Number 3, have you ever accidentally sworn on air?
Yes. and Dwight Evans was on it, even though Dwight Evans played for the Red Sox, and I was doing the Red Sox game at the time. I was doing a Red Sox game on ESPN with Ray Knight.
Okay.
And Dwight Evans came to the plate, and he had 2,299 career hits. So I wanted to say, here's Dwight Evans. He's one hit shy of 2,300. And instead it came out that he was one something high of 2,300. One, yeah. I said.
That's perfect. All right. Number 4. He's one coop shy.
A podcast, you can say whatever, right? I always try to be respectful of the fact that when you're in public forum, you should keep it.
I think that's wise.
Respectful and clean.
Number 4, final one for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to pick your favorite sportscaster based in Chicago, under 40 years old, whose name does not rhyme with chasing confetti, who would it be?
Wow. How old's John Shambi now?
Nope, no, too old.
No, I would say you.
Yeah!
But
eat it, Benetti!
That was a big if, because Benetti
can't pick it.
In our circle of friendship, I guess it would be a triangle of friendship.
Nope.
And I do have a picture, which I wish I could get off the wall there, of the three of us, you, me, and Benetti, having dinner in Chicago a few years ago.
That was.
I'm very happy for Jason and for you, for all of your successes, because it's been fun to kind of know you when you were both just starting. I mean, I knew Jason when he was in college,
right? And
he asked me to listen to one of his tapes, and I called him. I think you expect me to just send him an email. I thought, like, you could be on network TV right now. You're that good.
Yeah.
And and he was.
And yet, all that aside, you just picked me ahead of him. So
I picked you. A hard lean toward the qualifier there, but I did. No, I love you, buddy, and I'm so happy for your success and Jason's. And this was a lot of fun.
You're a good man. Thanks, Johnny.
Don't tell anybody. I've worked so hard to, cultivate the other image. We don't want to ruin it now.
Fair point.
But it's fun. Yeah, that's why I like this. It's a chance to be yourself. Like friends of mine say all the time, why aren't you yourself more on TV? So, well, because I'm supposed to be broadcasting a game. But this format allows you a chance to have a little fun and a couple chuckles. And always great talking to you.
You're the best. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Mike. Good to see you, buddy. Stay safe and healthy, and we'll talk to you again soon.
So to recap, out of all the sporting arenas he's been to, Champaign's old Assembly Hall is up there with the loudest he's heard. If you ever have to say one hit shy, say it slowly. And I still don't know if we've sorted out the confusion over the official name of the television network I work at. My thanks to Jonathan McDonough for joining me. Heads up that our pal Alex Rue always has great stuff on his Take 10 podcast. Be sure to check that out. But that'll do it for this episode. From the Big Ten Network in Chicago, I'm Mike Hall. We'll see you next week.